2 years ago, on January the 6th, our democracy was attacked. There's no other way of saying it. The U.S. Capitol was breached, which had never happened before in the history of the United States of America, even during the Civil War. A violent mob of insurrectionists assaulted law enforcement, vandalized sacred halls, hunted down elected officials, all for the purpose to attempt to overthrow the will of the people and usurp the peaceful transfer of power. All of it was fueled by lies about the 2020 election. But on this day, 2 years ago, our democracy held because we, the people, as the Constitution refers to us, we, the people, did not flinch. We, the people, endured. We, the people, prevailed. And on this day of remembrance, joined by the Vice President and the Second Gentleman and all of you, we honor a remarkable group of Americans who embodied the best before, during, and after January the 6th, 2021.
And happy Friday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Friday, January 6th, the first deal of the year. And we're going to get right to this because you know there's total chaos going on in the House of Representatives, and that's Val Atkinson. Unfortunately, he has on a Duke shirt, but we'll forgive that. Val Atkinson is 1/6/2023. So it also happens to be the 2-year anniversary of the insurrection. Before we talk about Kevin McCarthy and his travails in trying to elect the House Speaker, go back to me to 1/6/2021. Tell me what you were thinking then. And in those intervening 2 years, have we learned anything from 1/6/2021?
I sincerely hope we've learned one heck of a lot, Ed, because if we have not, I think we are doomed to repeat something far, far similar to that. I think if I go back to 1/6/21, I, like a lot of other Americans, were sort of looking at this as, well, they're just protesting and they'll melt away and they'll recede back into the crowd and everything will go on as usual. And then I began to follow the cameras as they followed the crowd up the steps. And people had weapons and they had armor and they had bear spray and so many other things that were not about the business of protesting, but were about the business of starting a fight or defending themselves or whatever. And I knew at that time, I said, this is different. This is something going on. And it's not by happenstance. This has been planned. And that's when I knew we were in for it at that time. And people began to fall and people began to get hurt. And things went from bad to worse.
In the lead into the program today, you probably saw a clip of President Joe Biden giving out awards to people who were part of the 1/6, who worked on Capitol Hill as Capitol Police and so on and so forth, Val. The other thing that strikes me is we had G.K. Butterfield on a few days after 1/6 on our connections and on the deal. And he talked about looking out the window and looking at those people coming across, the lawn there up into the Capitol and not knowing how his friends and colleagues were going to fare, that were inside. And we know even more now because of the 1/6 committee and all the material that they released. So I'm trying to segue into what's going on right now, which is the House is in this fight over who's going to be the speaker. And one of the things I think that's happening in that speaker fight is those Republicans, especially people like Gates from Florida and Gohmert from Texas, they were part of the insurrection. As you remember, more than 200 Republicans voted against certifying the results of the election. You had people who were supporters of the insurrection, and now they stand to be in charge in the House. So to the last part of the 1/6 stuff I want to talk about is is there anything that's going to come of all that work that Benny Thompson and all those people did in the 1-6 committee?
I really am dubious regarding what could or what should come about all of that hard work, because it has been nothing short of a lot of hard work that these committee members have put in, them and their staff. And with a Republican Congress, what it tells me is that this whole thing could go bye-bye, as I like to call it. It could go away. And it's a kind of a thing that we hate to see happen, but I think they've let the cat out of the bag when they basically said that they're going to spend a lot of their time on investigating Hunter Biden, that they're going to spend a lot of their time seeing if it's necessary to impeach Joe Biden. And so they've told us that they're not going to worry about what work, good work that Liz Cheney or my good frat brother did from Mississippi. They're not going to worry about that. They are going to kill everything that was positive and good about the 1-6 committee and their investigation. So I would say, don't anybody depend upon nothing else happening good about the 1-6 committee. No, it's going bye-bye.
That's unfortunate, Val, because the other piece of it is that the Democrats don't have a significant enough majority over in the Senate to perhaps, move some of that investigation over to the Senate, right? That's not going to happen either, because Kristen Sinema sort of double-crossed the Democrats and said that she was going to be an independent, even though she was going to still caucus with the Democrats or whatever, but not solidify that majority. Again, before we segue fully into this debacle that's going on, trying to choose the speaker, what happens over in the Senate side then? Is there anything Schumer can do? I mean, I guess they will probably win most of the votes they have, but Sinema and to some degree Manchin still has proven not to be reliable partners. Are we just going to be at a stalemate and nothing really happen? No legislation of any meaning get passed for the next 2 years?
Well, one of the things we got to do is we've got to back up and really understand where we are. Democrats refuse to face reality at this particular time. The reality of it all, whether you're talking about 1-6, whether you're talking about the investigation by the House, whether you're talking about the Senate, it's all in the same bag, and that is this. The right-wing portion of the Republican Party is not about the business of negotiation. They are not about bipartisanship. You can't make a deal with these guys. You can't use logic to talk with them. They want to destroy the system that we have because they don't like what it portends. The system that we have now says that the majority rules, which means somewhere around 2042, the coalition of Black and brown people and white liberals will be running the United States of America if they so choose. Conservative whites stay up all night fretting that notion or that idea. They don't want that. They don't want to live in a country that is democratic and pluralistic and justice and fair and free, because that would mean all of their principles, the tenets that they live by, will have to be ruled by the rule of law. And in that case, they can't have things like denied abortions. They can't have things such as CRT denial. And they can't see themselves living in a place that they can't have those kind of principles and tenets that they've been living by all of their lives. So because of that, they are trying to throw a hand grenade in the whole mix. They don't want it to work. Democrats are still holding on to all faith and hope that, okay, well, what can we do to make it work? Can we do this? And what are the numbers? Is it 50 or 51? And what can happen next? Hey, I wrote a piece that hopefully will end up in some blog pretty soon. I'll be sending it through. It's called When Will Our 75,000 Be Called Up? And I make an analogy between when Abraham Lincoln had to stop pretending that the South really wasn't seceding when they fired on Fort Sumter and made Major Johnson surrender, Major Anderson surrender to them. He finally saw that, hey, this is not a game anymore. I can't talk them out of coming back and playing nicey-nicey. So I got to call up 75,000 troops and we got to get rid of this thing. Maybe it'll take 90 days. We haven't gotten to that point as Democrats yet. The Republicans are not playing games. You're not going to talk them out of, or not going to talk them down from. They're trying to destroy this thing. They don't want to be a part of it because they don't see a win for them. And it's going to keep going this way badly, I might add, until the Democrats realize that, hey, you can't talk these guys into coming back and playing nicely like we used to play 50, 60 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. There's no compromise with these people. I want to remind you, you're watching The Deal. This is Ed Clark, and that's Val Atkinson. This is the first show of season 4 of The Deal. I can't believe it. And we're in season 4, and we got some good news last week, Val. We were looking at the numbers of people who viewed The Deal last year. It was quite a few. And then we also had regular listeners and viewers in 5 countries, the UK, New Zealand, Philippines, so South Africa. We had people from all over the place. And we're growing our audience, and we want to continue to grow the audience because we think we have smart conversation here. We talk about a lot of stuff. Yeah, we talk a lot of junk, but it's backed up by history, which we always do. And I'm glad that you brought in history again, like we normally do. So Val, let's talk about some history then. So as we're recording this, it's Friday. It's around 4. We waited until the end of the to see if they would vote to adjourn, and they did, and they will adjourn until 10 p.m. tonight. So by the time they come back in session, this will be uploaded, and so I'm going to make a prediction. I'm gonna say there's going to be a 14th vote, and Kevin McCarthy will fail again. So right now, as it stands on the 13th ballot, Val, Kevin McCarthy finally passed Hakeem Jeffries. Every vote had been, 212 for Jeffries because all the Democrats were staying in line. And then, McCarthy was down at 202 at his lowest, and now he's, at 213, 214. But he needs 218 to win. So there's these people like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and Louis Gohmert, the people that you were just talking about, who are intransigent and will never make a deal, and everything is about them. I wrote my piece that should be posted on The Deal with edclark.com about the schadenfreude that I've been feeling, that I have been really pleased that Kevin McCarthy's been having to sit there and look like he's eating crow. But at the same time, I know that this is going to end and the Republicans will have the speakership. Whether it's Kevin McCarthy or somebody else, there's no way for the Democrats to make Hakeem Jeffries speaker, no matter how pleased I am that Kevin McCarthy is having to suffer. So here we go. Here's the question. And I'm going to make you make a prediction for 10 p.m. tonight. By the time people see this, and then they reconvene at 10 p.m., will my prediction hold that Kevin McCarthy is going to have to go through at least another vote, and maybe more? And if he does, to what end is it that they go through another vote, Val? I mean, I think he will have to because of the people that we're talking about. Gaetz says he's never voting for him. There's 2 Republicans who are not there today. So there's probably not a real path to victory for McCarthy. So what's your prediction for 10 p.m. tonight?
Well, just to be obstinate, I'm going to say that this is going to be the deal. 14 is going to be the lucky number for Kevin McCarthy. And the reason I'm saying that is twofold. First of all, the rules of the House says that, a majority of the people who answer the roll call by their surname and vote will be the speaker. And that means you're getting away from people who decide to go to the bathroom or take a nap or do whatever. That brings down the number that you need to make the majority. So instead of 218, you could be talking 216, 213, whatever, if enough members are not there and the majority is a different number. The other thing is, while we don't have a speaker, we don't have an organization, and people haven't been sworn in, you got staff that's not being paid. And you got a weekend coming up. And people are thinking about that. And they're thinking, am I going to stay here and sleep on the floor of my boss's office just to give another vote to something that 2 or 3 days into next week is going to turn the table anyway? What am I doing? Let's just get this mess over with. And I'm talking about these 5 or 6 guys that are supposed to be never Kevins, okay? If they say, because it's up to them, it's not up to Democrats, but if they say, I need to go home, so let's just vote and turn it the other way. Or if enough Democrats say, I can't do this anymore, I don't know what we're fighting for, I'm going home, then that 218 number comes down to something manageable for McCarthy, maybe 212 or maybe even 210 or so, and he wins. That's my rationale for why it's going to end at 14. I hope that I am wrong. I'd like to see this thing drug out a few more days. I love watching that look on McCarthy's face. I love it.
Yeah, like I said, that's what my piece is about, the schadenfreude I've been feeling. That good, warm feeling you get when somebody else is suffering. Yeah. and McCarthy clearly has been suffering because it has to be humiliating because people are essentially telling you that they don't want you. And he knows that he probably erred when he had a chance to throw Donald Trump under the bus and he would not do it. And now he can't do anything about it, right? He had every opportunity to make it clear that where he stood, and then he just sits there and looks like he's eating crow all the time now. And how are you going to be able to deal with these people in your conference who told you, for all intent and purposes, they don't trust you and they don't believe in you at all. The other part of this, Val, is one of the more cynical things that the Republicans did is they put this fella Byron Donalds up at one point, and he was getting 20 votes at one point. And one of the things that they said in nominating him, and I was really pissed off when I heard it, the person who got out to nominate him said, well, the Republicans believe in the content of your character and not the color of the skin. Well, hell, what is Hakeem Jeffries? He's a black dude that's clearly there for the content of his character. What is he saying? The Democrats put Hakeem Jeffries in there because he's just black, but the Republicans nominated Byron Donalds just because he was the most qualified, when clearly Donald was never going to get enough vote. Talk to me about the cynical nature of that, when they were putting names up like Byron Donald.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because it's an example of how shrewd Republicans have been over the years. They would love for us to get in a comparative conversation with Donalds and Jeffries. But the truth of the matter is what really stirs the drink for Republicans is they can make an analogy between Donald's and Martin Luther King, because he was the one that talked about the content of your character instead of the color of your skin. Okay. And now, if you go that extra step yourself and say, yeah, that makes sense, because I heard it before. Yeah, that makes sense. And Republicans are putting up a black guy and they're quoting Martin Luther King. You know, they may not be that bad after all. And to too many Democrats, that slips right by them. And they've been doing this kind of stuff, man, forever, it seems like, since Ronald Reagan that I know about. And Democrats one day are going to have to wake up and stop allowing these guys to use them in this way.
Well, it didn't get by me. It was some bullshit. So look, we need to take a break. But when we do, let me give a program note. So the deal is in this fourth season. We have a new special correspondent that we're adding to the show. Her name is Cherelle James. Cherelle has been in the radio business a long time too, out of Elizabeth City, North Carolina. She got her training up at Elizabeth City State University. She worked for a program director that both you and I worked for, Val, at one point, Edith Thorpe. And she interviewed a lady named Katie Lawson, who's a tax attorney. So in the break, you're going to see a little bit of Cherelle James and Katie Lawson talking about some tax stuff that you need to know about. And then you'll be able to go later on and get the full interview with Katie Lawson as a special to the deal. So one of the things that we're going to be adding in season 4 is a lot of these specials where Cherelle James is going to be, talking to people about different subjects. Right now, we're working on trying to get Valerie Fouché, who is the new representative for state of North Carolina, representing North Carolina, and Don Davis on, who's the other representative that's in North Carolina. So in the meantime, stay right there. We'll be right back. Val and I are going to finish talking about Hakeem Jeffries. We're going to talk about Demar Hamlin. We're going to talk about Kevin McCarthy. I'm sure some more. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, let me just tell you, one of the things I didn't mention, I talked about the podcast, but I did not mention that I am a business owner, my local CFO, which is a financial firm. And I met this particular young lady in business. We are business partners. We collaborate a lot. We share a lot back and forth and help each other out. And it's none other than attorney Katie Lawson. And I call her, my nickname for her, and I'm going to date myself now to those who are listening, the Matlock of tax attorney is what I've always called her almost for day one. And she's really good at what she does and she's very knowledgeable. So I call her all the time. But Katie is amazing. And she, tax attorney, that means that she understands tax law, but she also understands just the nuances of taxes itself, right? So there's a legal aspect and then there's a financial aspect, and she is at the crux of it, of both of those, of bringing them all together. And so she is definitely someone that you want on your side before you get in trouble, but definitely when you're in trouble. And that's Katie Lawson, attorney Katie Lawson, that is.
Thank you, Ed, for having me. And Cherelle, thank you for that introduction. The Matlock of tax law. Luckily, I'm not in a courtroom with the smoking gun, but I can find you a smoking number.
Well, let me start with the first question, Katie, because we're right around the corner from tax time and people will be getting their W-2s. And I'm going to ask you a real practical question right off the bat, not one of those hard attorney questions. I'll leave those for Cherelle. But, a lot of people feel like, you get this W-2 form and you immediately run to one of the tax preparation companies and you give away a lot of your money by using those firms. But there is a risk of doing your own tax. So here's the softball question for you. When do you tell people it's probably a good time to do your own taxes, or at least look at using some of the online things as opposed to, going to one of those tax preparation companies?
So if you have a simple tax return, let's say if you have income from W-2 employment, and that's your only source of income, then that's fine to use one of those, to use a tax software. And a lot of them are good. A lot of them are great. and they have questions that will walk you step by step to make sure that you maximize your refund from a W-2 job. Now,
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. In the first segment, we were talking about 1/6, trying to commemorate that tragic day. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I can overstate this. We were on the verge of losing the democracy. Had they got their hands on Nancy Pelosi, I suspect bad things would have happened. I know they wanted to hang Mike Pence, Val, and that would have been unprecedented. Police officers died. It was a bad thing. Joe Biden awarded some medals. You probably saw some of that in the clips in coming back from the break of him handing out awards to people who participated in trying to save democracy. And so we find ourselves, Val, with this vote for speaker. And we'll revisit that a little bit more. But one of the things that we keep seeing is this Hakeem Jeffries being nominated to be speaker as well. And like I said, for 13 of the votes, he was the leader in the race. He got 212 votes. All the Democrats stayed in line or whatever. Is there any significance, really, with him not having any real power, right? Even if the Republicans have a slim majority, they have a majority. But what's the significance of the first Black person being the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives? Does it mean anything? Is it part of what you were talking about earlier, that at some point in the near future, Black and brown people are going to be the majority anyway, and it was just time for there to be a Black speaker?
Well, it breaks the glass, as Hillary Clinton used to talk about all the time when she was running for president. It breaks the glass, and it allows certain people to become accustomed or get used to, if you will, the idea of somebody who doesn't look like them being in positions that they had not held before. And you don't have to worry about breaking that glass again. Once it's broken, that's it. So that's the importance of it. And I think that it was an opportunity for Democrats to show their base that, hey, I haven't forgotten about you. I know which side my bread is buttered on. I know how I got here. And without you, I would not be here. So it was another chance for them to do that. And the Democrats have been doing a pretty good job at that all over the place. So I'm glad to see that. I understand why they did it. But at the same time, I agree with you 100%, Ed. The power is limited that a minority leader in the House has, even in a closely divided House of Representatives, where there's only a difference of just a handful of seats. He still doesn't have any power, except that power that is allotted to a opposition party when we have a very tight majority rule here. When some of the, what I call extreme right wing of the Republican parties start peeling off and say, I can't abide that, the only place for the speaker to go at that time will be to the Democrats and say, hey, I need 4 votes. I need 5 votes to get this thing to pass. And Jeffries should be right there saying, hey, no problem, Kevin. What do I get? Let me tell you about some of the things I want. And then that's when the deal making starts. So in that regard, it's a very, very important position. And I think Jeffries has placed himself in a position that we're going to have 119th Congress, hopefully. That's 2 years from now. And after that happens, if the Democrats take back the House, who's the front runner to be Speaker? Hakeem Jeffries. So that's why this is so important, to have him in that position, even though he is the minority leader instead of Speaker of the House.
Yeah, I think it is very important. Let's talk about some of the things that the Republicans want, at least these people who claim they want to, influence the rules in such a way that makes it work out for them. And one of the things they want is a resolution to oust this, to be able, so one person to say, I don't like this speaker, let's have a vote on it. How does that work, Val? Right now, the rule is that there has to be 5 people that come to the floor and bring that resolution. But with one, and with all the contention with the Republicans, is this just a way to make sure there's complete chaos all the time? The other interesting one is they're demanding some of the members on that farthest right get committee assignments. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was stripped of committee assignments because of her behavior, to get these prime positions, and even pick somebody like Jim Jordan to be head of the Judiciary Committee, right? And be able to, in ahead of investigative bodies, so they can do the things like investigate Hunter Biden. Just those 2 things alone, having people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then this one person being able to ask for the ouster of the speaker, are those real things that would make the House work better, or is that just hostage negotiation tactics on the part of those far right people?
Well, first of all, let's understand where that whole 1 person, 5-person thing came from. For over a couple hundred years, it's always been 1 person. When Nancy came in, she changed it. And she changed it to the 5-person deal, that you need 5 people to ask for a head up or down on the speaker. So what the Republicans are doing now is said, we're going to change it back the other way. Many of them don't like it, but they like Nancy Pelosi even less. And they don't want to work under anything that she's put in. No, we're not going to work under that rule because it's yours, Nancy, and we're going to get rid of that. But even though it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 5, it has to come to a vote in the House. And as long as Republicans, or those people who voted for Kevin McCarthy, if it lands out that way, as long as they stay in the majority, it doesn't matter if it's 1, 5, 10, 100, it still has to come back to a majority vote. Now, things can get dicey if the speaker gets in trouble and some of his people start resigning or switching party affiliation or some other crazy thing, and the numbers start looking kind of lopsided, and then somebody brings up that notion of whether or not we want to vote up or down on the speaker, then it becomes a problem. But as long as he keeps his fingernails clean and that sort of thing, shouldn't have too much of a problem with that. Now, the other one about the speaker, about the committee assignments, that's crucial. Now, that's very important. You mentioned, the last one you mentioned, Ed, I like to pick up on first, when you're talking about the Judiciary Committee, because those are the ones that's going to handle the whole business of investigation, whether it's Joe Biden or Hunter Biden. They're going to do that, and they're going to make that's all everything is about. If somebody wants to talk about the 1-6 investigation, they're going to tell you, we're not talking about that now. Once we finish Hunter Biden, we'll talk about that maybe, if we have time left. So they are going to do that, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Anything coming up involving Donald Trump won't be taken up. Anything coming up involving a Democrat will be handled with all urgency. That's the way they're going to do it. That's the way the party in power does it. So whoever is in that committee is unbelievable. Marjorie Taylor Greene, in charge of any committee, is really asking for it if you're talking about keeping a sane, decent republic going, such as the United States that calls itself a democracy. She is going to kill this republic that we have. She's going to kill it. And people have to be aware of that. I would not be surprised, and let me be first to go on record of saying she may be one of the very few as a committee head that's ousted by her own party. I think she could be that rancorous.
We could only hope, because the schadenfreude I would feel with that would be as much as the one I'm feeling with Kevin McCarthy. She's an odious person. But you know who's more odious, I think? Matt Gaetz. I mean, this guy has managed to skirt around having sex with 17-year-old girls. His buddy has been convicted and pled guilty to it, and somehow Gaetz hasn't had to answer for it. I think Jim Jordan has never had to answer for the young men who were being sexually abused on the wrestling team where he was the coach. And then you add Bobert and Gomert and some of those other people, and even this new guy Santos. So let's talk about him for just a second, Val. He's a representative from the state of New York who apparently may not even be a real person as far as I can tell, but I've seen him lurking in the background of some of these conversations that are going on with the Republicans, and clearly the Republicans need his one vote, at least for right now, right? And they haven't said anything at all about sanctioning this guy who didn't tell the truth about anything. What becomes of that if that? I think ethics has to have an even number of people on the committee. So that may be the only thing, but you still got to vote to get this guy out, and the Republicans can't afford to lose one vote. Are they going to just leave this Santos clown in there?
Well, they almost have to, because like you said, they can't afford to lose any votes, pal. I mean, but you know what it's like, Ed? You know, I'm an old student of the Civil War and stuff like that, so I give a lot of examples of that. But this reminds me of after the Civil War started, it would have been like Thaddeus Stevens, who was in the Congress. He was a Republican at that time, but very, very liberal. Thaddeus Stevens and Abraham Lincoln and all those other liberal Republicans getting together and say, do you know what Alexander Stevens did? He just did X and he just did Y. And PGT Beauregard, the guy who started the war and fired on Fort Sumter, we found that he'd been sleeping with little boys. You know, somebody's got to wake and shake them and say, hey, that stuff don't matter. These guys are trying to kill us. We're in a civil war. They are trying to kill us, and you're talking, they don't give a hoot about that kind of stuff. And that's what's going on right now. That's how Marjorie Taylor Greene, Bobart, that's how all of these people, your young man from New York that lies about his resume and stuff, that's how they can do this kind of stuff, Ed. And nobody gives a hoot about it. The media is on board because all the media wants to do is talk about dramatic things that raise ratings, okay? So they can make money. And these guys are getting away with murder. They're getting away with murder. I have never seen anything like this. You can go back 40 years, and I will never have imagined that we could be in a place where a guy could lie on his resume about the schools he attended, about the jobs he held, about the things he did, and laugh about it and keep his job. Sleeping with 17-year-old girls. How do you do this stuff? You do it when the people that are doing are saying, I don't care what you think, because I don't play by your rules anymore. I'm trying to destroy your rules. So you keep talking about me breaking the rules, and I'm going to keep breaking them and doing everything I can to destroy your system because I don't want it. Yeah. I don't know what I got to do to make you understand that I don't want your system and I'm trying to destroy it. But as long as you don't do anything, as long as I got you talking about it, you won't do anything about it.
Well, you know, Herschel Walker was a good indication. They were willing to let that clown be a senator. Yeah. And he almost won, Val.
Funny, that thing was close.
I don't care what people say. He had, I think had he had one fewer scandal, he may have won. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I spent time in Georgia right before the runoff, and he had a lot of support, Val. And there's people all throughout that Republican Party that have all kind of stuff attached to them, and they still manage to do okay. You know what? I want to remind you, you're watching The Deal, or if you're listening to it on the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, whatever. We appreciate it. Please make sure you subscribe if you are so inclined. Tell other people about it. Get them to subscribe. We're trying to build an audience. Val, there's one more thing I want to talk about before we take our final break. The jobs numbers came out today, and one of the things that it said is that unemployment is still really low, and it's slowed a little bit, but it's still low. The stock market, by the time we were getting ready to come on, was about to close, and they recorded a modest gain. They took back, some of what they had lost over the last few weeks. Joe Biden, and gas prices are down on top of that. Joe Biden has been able to be remarkably successful despite all the stuff we heard about him being incompetent from the right and all that, blah, blah, blah. So here's the loaded question. Those job numbers, gas prices being down, all the stuff I named, where does Joe Biden stand in all of this? He even hung out with Mitch McConnell the other day and dedicated a new bridge, showing that you could get stuff done. I know a lot of Republicans don't want to be bipartisan, but Joe Biden seems to still be really committed to that. Is that really the path to something positive, or has he just been lucky so far that he seems like he's winning? I guess is my point.
I don't mean to obfuscate or try to skip your question here, but the answer is hell no. He ain't winning nothing. We got to understand one thing about this. When he stands up with that bridge with Mitch McConnell, when gas prices start going down, when unemployment is low, all of these things, it doesn't have an effect on the right wing. They ain't giving him no credit. I don't care what the numbers are. It has no effect on people like you and I, because we probably are going to support some of the policies that Joe Biden and some of the other people have, regardless of where the stock market is, or regardless of where inflation is. So who is this directed at? It's directed at some of those independents in the middle, trying to get them to see that, hey, this may not be a bad deal. This guy's doing a pretty good job, whatever. And for my money, and I've said it to you, Ed, 1,000 times, we talk off mic more so than we do on mic. I just don't believe personally that there are that many independents or that many people out there that have not made up their mind and don't see any difference between a Kevin McCarthy, a Donald Trump, and a Vice President Harris and a President Biden. I mean, if you tell me there's 6 in one hand and half dozen in the other with those 4 people, I got a problem dealing with you. If you're telling me that gas prices going from $3.19 to $2.99 is going to sway that person as to who they vote for President of the United States, I'm really off kilter. I've just been knocked aback, because I think it's deeper than that. It's much deeper than that calls people to make a decision who to give the mantle to for the next 4 years. It has to do with a lot of inner stuff that has nothing to do with this surface inflation, gas prices, Hunter Biden. It has to do with some inner stuff that people have been living with for years, Ed. I'm sorry to say.
Okay. Well, I buy that because it's coming from you. You should know. Look, let's take our last break. When we come back, I got 2 more stories I want to talk to you about. One about the border. Joe Biden's supposed to go to the border next week, I believe. I want to talk to you about some immigration stuff, but I also want to talk to you about Demar Hamlin, who was a NFL player who was hurt. He's on the mend, and we'll talk about that. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it up. You're watching The Deal.
Hi, I'm Katie Lawson with the Law Office of Katie Lawson, where the law is in our name. If you need to contact us, please feel free to give us a call at 919-885-4019 or email us at admin@klawsonlaw.com. We're conveniently located at 2144 Page Road, Suite 204 in Durham, North Carolina. Please come and see us.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That is Val Atkinson over there with the ugly sweatshirt on. I forgot it was ugly sweatshirt day. So I'll make sure I have on an ugly sweatshirt the next time we're on, Val. But on a serious note, we've been talking about a lot of serious stuff. We've been talking about the travails of Kevin McCarthy. Obviously, we started out talking about 1-6 because it is 1-6. We're here a little bit earlier than usual. We're normally here on Saturday. So if you're new to The Deal, because I know we got some new people coming in, watching us. We're normally on Saturdays, but we felt like it was important enough to put this program together today because of the historic nature of the fight over whether or not there's going to be a speaker. We've talked about the economy and growth in the economy and a little bit of the market rebound. We talked about Hakeem Jeffries. In the breaks, you've seen some clips from our new correspondent, Cherelle James, talking to noted tax attorney Katie Lawson. You'll be able to pick up that full interview with Katie Lawson during the week on the website. My new piece on the Schadenfreude of watching Kevin McCarthy squirm is also on the website. And then Val Atkinson has a piece coming up on the website as well. So 2023 promises to be a very exciting year for us. We would like for you to come along with us and bring some other people as well. So if that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher, you name it, that's where we are. So pick us up on any of those places and please subscribe. Val, one last piece of politics before we talk about Demar Hamlin in NFL. There's been all this talk by the Republicans for months, for years even, that the Democrats aren't doing anything about the border. Needless to say, there was the orange guy who used to live at Pennsylvania Avenue, was president for 4 years. And at the beginning of his administration, he also had the House and Senate, and there was no real immigration policy, right? Then when Biden comes into office, all we hear is that Vice President Harris is supposed to be over the border. She hasn't done anything, and we want to impeach the head of, DHS and blah, blah, blah. And now the Republicans are going to have the House. There's going to be a slim majority for the Democrats in the Senate. And they're still talking about the border. But here's the reality, Val. I think about this all the time. If you watch the pictures of people at the border, you see a lot of these young men who are standing there. And when they come into America, they get jobs, a lot of them in construction and other stuff. They're hired by rich people. When's the last time you hired a undocumented worker? I don't believe you have. I look over here at the construction site out of my window at this studio, and the whole construction site are immigrants. Whether they're legal or illegal, I don't know. I don't ask for their papers, but the reality is, Val, that rich people hire these immigrants, and then they allow poor and middle class people to fight the battle over whether or not somebody should be elected over immigration policy. Can you talk to me real quick about what do you do about immigration policy that's real and meaningful and sustainable, or there really is nothing? It's just a political ping pong. It doesn't really mean anything. Nobody really wants to do anything about immigration. That's my view of it. But what's your view of it?
I concur. I believe the deal is what some right-wing GOPers have done is that they've managed to separate financial issues from social issues. And they've done a great job at it. They've managed to be able to make money from illegal immigration, while at the same time have their voting base to hate those people that they're making money off of because they're bringing drugs and sex trafficking and all that stuff into the country. They're good at that. They're great at that, and they got us arguing about the nuances of the laws and policies and statutes about these things, while they're making all the money and creating hate in the minds of their constituents to get them to go down and pull the lever for them to get in office again. I tell you, once this is all over, people are going to say they had us in a deep headlock longer than we ever knew. They had us in a deep headlock when we thought we were fighting. They were standing back laughing at us. But immigration is a double-edged sword. Like you said initially, it's an issue that impacts the economy. It impacts the economy more so than people realize here, because once you cut off that immigration spigot, as it were, from the southern border in particular, some of the labor-intensive jobs that we have been accustomed to being handled by non-Americans, they create problems, and the supply chain starts getting bottlenecked and choked up, and many other things start happening. And now we got issues on the retail end of things, where the supply and demand says prices got to go up, and we call it inflation, and we blame Joe Biden for it. It all started because the guys couldn't get the lettuce out of the field, okay? And he couldn't put it on the railroad tracks, and he couldn't get it to the barge in the harbor, and he couldn't get it on a truck, and he couldn't get it to the supermarket, wholesaler, and down to the retailer. And there was so few heads of lettuce that the retailer had to raise the price on it in order to make a profit, okay? So that's what happened to that chain, and it all started with the immigration, but we ain't writing the story. It's just like the Civil War. One of the first times that the loser wrote the story about the Civil War. That's why you had all these Confederate monuments everywhere. We ain't writing the story about this inflation thing. Although we run the executive, we run the Senate, and we got a tight House. We ain't writing the story because Wall Street is run by people who support Republicans, okay? So they're the one that's writing the story. Media is run by people who support right-wingers, okay? They're the ones that's writing the story, so it gets to look as inflation is something that's caused by the Democrats and they ain't fixing it.
Yeah. Well, so what we just said is that immigration is a hoodoo, and nobody's going to do anything about it. I think we answered the question there. Hey, you know what? We're going to switch gears really quick and go to a completely different end of the world and over to the NFL, Val, and talk about Demar Hamlin. I don't know if you were watching the game at the time. I had just turned the TV no more than a minute before Mr. Demar Hamlin made a tackle and collapsed on the field and went into cardiac arrest. And we know the rest of it. He was in the ICU as of about 4:00 on today on the 6th. He was actually talking. They had taken the tube out, and he had communicated with his teammates and all of that. But here's the question, Val. NFL is a very dangerous sport, and there's a lot of Negroes that play in the NFL. And there are a number of commentators, including myself, who are former sports people, love sports. I even watched the game. I have no interest in whether or not Cincinnati or Buffalo wins, but I was watching the game anyway, because that's what Americans do, right? We watch football. But here's the reality. NFL, like I said, is very dangerous. And the one aspect of this that I think is the most troubling is Mr. Hamlin had if he's not able to go back into the NFL, they have no obligation to pay this brother. He is not vested. He hasn't played long enough. He won't get a pension. What if his heart never is bright again? And that's one of the things about the NFL. But the NFL owners have all these tax incentives, and we build them stadiums, and they get all kind of money and stuff. But I can't remember the columnist. I think it was Blow, who wrote a column or a book called "A $40 Million Slave," about how the salaries look like they're a lot of money, but when you deconstruct it all the money goes right back into the NFL owners, and then plus you got this whole issue of CTE, blah blah blah. So let me stop talking. Let me let you tell me. You watch sport and you watch NFL. Why do these NFL owners get so much deference while these $40 million slaves risk their lives to entertain us?
Well, Ed, I don't know if I could say it any clearer than what you just said. I like that title, $40 million slave, because when I look at the combines that these athletes, these NFL players have to go through, it takes me back to slavery, because that's how it was. They were looking at the teeth, turn them around, look at their back, take your shirt off, see how many lashes you've had. That means that you are disciplined or you're not disciplined person. Okay. So many things that they did to just treat them like slaves. And then they had these little, what I call gladiator stunts. If you look at the movie Django Unchained, where these two guys fighting each other on the living room floor there. And it was a fight to the death. And that's the way some of these players are being managed in these NFL combines now. And like you said, Ed, if something happens to them before they become invested, before they come vested, it's problematic. Whether or not this great young man, Demar Hamlin, ever plays ball again, to me, I don't care as long as he's there now. That's the thing I'm concerned about, him and his family. But it's an issue that since we got this whole thing open, I think people need to look at it clearly for what it is and say that, hey, you're steadily giving money to these billionaires. They don't know what they want to do with it. And you're not taking care of the people out here putting their lives on the line every day so that this guy can get richer. I was really buoyed, as you were, Ed, by the news that he had been taken off of the ventilator and that he was upright and he was talking and communicating very well, because what we witnessed in that football game was the death of a football player on the field. There's no other way you can sugarcoat it. He died, because that's what the quarterback for the Bills was sobbing about. He said that when he saw the defibrillators come out, he thought, why do you need defibrillators on the football field? Somebody has died. You're trying to bring them back. That's the only time you use defibrillators, okay? It's not for a cramp or a twisted ankle. Somebody has died. So this guy died on the football field. We had to resuscitate him. I understand there's a couple of other reports saying he died again at the hospital. They had to resuscitate him a second time. And to know now that he is talking and communicating with people, that is, I tell you, I don't know the man, and I doubt very seriously if he's related to me anywhere down the line, but I feel like I had a relative that had come back. I feel so good to hear that he was progressing the way he is.
Yeah, I suspect, Val, that more people in the country have been paying more attention to the Demar Hamlin story than Kevin McCarthy's travails in the House, even though the McCarthy travails and whether or not the Republicans can get their act together are much more serious, and the 1/6 anniversary is also very serious. We're at the end of time for this week. I want to, thank you for listening and tuning in again. Please subscribe Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your fine podcasts from. Val, you know what I always do before the end of the show? I always ask you, what do we have to look forward to? Anything you're working on? Anything you want to tell us about?
Yes, I am still working on the second edition of my second book, and I suspect that it should be ready sometimes this spring, which is a good little ways away, but I'm working feverishly on that. And I'm glad that you took the opportunity to tell folks that my little column will be ready on The Deal piece here coming up soon. And I look forward to writing many, many more.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that too. And like I said, we're expanding the Deal family. Cherelle James is a new member of the family. You've seen her in a couple of the breaks where she's doing the interview with Katie Lawson, tax attorney. That piece, that interview with Katie Lawson will be available on the Deal website as well as a special edition. We'll be doing those. We're working on trying to get some folks from Congress on here for the next episode to talk about what was going on in DC. So we're feverishly contacting people for that. So that brings me to one last thing, Val, that we don't normally do. We don't ask people for money or any of that kind of thing like that. But what I ask you to do is that if you believe in what we're doing, like I said, tell other people so that we can gain audience, because I think it's important, because there's few outlets, I think, where you get the unadulterated news and history and deep discussion like you do at The Deal. So in the meantime, go do something good for somebody today. Come back with us next week. We'll be here either on Friday or Saturday. We'll let you know in plenty of time. But either way, make sure that you subscribe, and we'll talk to you again. Have a good evening. Bye.